Yeah. So, thanks for coming on.
Yeah,
It's been a while.
it has, yes.
So we're actually going to rate from the worst to the best
Okay.
kick for self-defense. So
Okay.
we're gonna rate starting from the first one would be the front kick. Now, is your front kick the same as a foot jab?
I think I would probably change my front kick. Instead of it being more like a push with the bottom of the foot, I would, depending on the shoes I'm wearing, I would probably go more pointed toe. Try and just crush those toes right into the solar plex or down to the groin, potentially, depending on the situation.
Okay, so I'm gonna list out the different type of kick that I have in my mind, and I want you to kind of like help me out with this.
Yep.
For self-defense, rating from the worst to the best.
Okay.
So the first one is a foot jab. That's
Yep.
number one. Number two is a low kick to the leg. Number three is gonna be a midline section to the body.
Okay.
And number four is a highline kick to the head. And number five is a spinning kick or a side kick.
Okay.
Spinning side kick.
Side kick.
Number five is a spinning kick. Number six is a side kick.
Okay, jeez. I got to remember all those. I know the spinning kick would be very low on my list. I'd probably put it at the bottom.
Okay.
Just because I feel like you'd have to be so high level to pull it off. And if you're Raymond Daniels or something like that, yeah, you can probably land your spinning kick at any point on anybody, no matter what the circumstances, just because it's so locked in. But even for somebody like myself, when I'm in the ring sometimes, even though I've done that kick thousands of times, I'll make a mistake and I'll try and hit too hard, or I'm nervous and I miss.
Yeah.
I just feel like it would just be, it's too much of a guessing game. Is it going to land, and is your back going to be exposed when you do it? So I think anything fancy, like spinning wise, would be at the very bottom for me.
So in your rating, spinning kick will be the lowest.
Yes, I think so.
So we'll place that at number 6 then.
Okay.
Number 5.
Probably put the head kick. I'd probably put the head kick down at number 5. Just because again, I just feel like there's too much up in the air. Is it going to land flush? Is it not going to land flush? Is the guy going to run in and tackle me? I think it would be very low on my priority list. It'd be so much easier just to go with a hand, because most people don't have great defense on the street, granted, but I feel like putting my leg way up there, there's too much unexpectedness which could happen, and if the guy shoots or does anything, there's too much. There's too many scenarios where I go,
risky.
It just feels a little risky to me. And in a kickboxing fight, boom, you blast it up, you're down. You're not worried about too much else. But on the street, it feels a little forced to me. I think next above that, I would go with the side kick for number 4, but that's just maybe me because I'm not a big side kick fan, and I recognize they do work, but just personally for me, I don't throw them a whole lot, and I don't shift to my side stance, and like I already said, I don't like the idea of turning too sideways. I like to be a little bit more square on, so I also very often think of what does my stance look like for my ability to diffuse the situation. And I feel like going to a side stance, it looks like I want to fight. There's no good way to be like, oh yeah, he went to a side stance, he didn't want to fight. Whereas just staying square and having my hands up like this, I might be able, I have many times diffused situations just like that. So I don't like the stance, and I just feel like it's not something I would use. So I would put that at number 4.
That's a good point.
Yeah, going up to the body, I feel like would be my number 3. I don't really have a great reason why, aside from the fact that I would rather just chop somebody's leg. I feel like a low kick, I actually did a video on it, low kicks in self-defense, would they work? And I feel like if you have a good understanding for the low kick of getting your head off the center line and the lack of conditioning that most people have in the leg, that if you smash one shin into their thigh, at least it's going to be wrecked enough that you can get out of there. It might not finish the fight, but if you chop somebody hard once, I feel like they're going to be hard pressed to chase after you as you're running, which is probably what I would do. Or I'd just be like, I'm walking away now. But if they're hobbling, they're not going to do much. I don't have a problem with the body round kicks, but I would just go number 2 for the low kick and number 3 for the body, I think.
Okay, I like that, because I actually prefer low kick for if I had to use a self-defense scenario,
Yeah.
chop the leg, and hopefully that'll kind of damage your leg enough they can't move.
I think it would be effective. And like I said, I've never done it before, but I feel like this is the position that I've always taken when somebody comes up to me and I'm like, oh, they're going to start doing something. I'm just like, oh, I don't want to fight. And I feel like a low kick is really easy to do from this distance. And they probably won't see it. They definitely won't react to it. Nobody on the street who's never checked a low kick is going to know how to check a low kick. So I feel like it's relatively safe. But I still like the front kick, just in terms of I feel like I could use it defensively or offensively, and I could decide, am I going to push the person away or am I going to jab my foot? I feel like there's so many options, and maybe a little less damaging overall if I hit somebody in the gut. I always think of that. I don't know why. Whenever I'm in a situation, I'm like, oh, how much damage am I going to do to this guy? And I never want to do damage, so I feel like a front kick's a nicer option, but that might be silly.
How would you differentiate the stance between like a combat sports versus like a self-defense scenario?
I think for self-defense, I would end up taking a very narrow base stance, mostly because I'm going to be very interested in movement. And as soon as I start getting deeper down, I feel like I'm going to be a little bit more sluggish. And like I said, I'm always thinking about diffusing situations. And as soon as you drop your weight, I feel like it looks like you want to fight. Whereas just kind of staying up straight and having your hands out, in my experience.
Kind of like this.
Yeah, in my experience, just being like this with one foot in front, 1 foot in the back has always worked as like, oh, I don't look offensive. I'm being very passive. But as soon as I close my fists or my feet spread out and I drop my weight, I feel like all that is, the guy wants to fight. And I'm inviting the guy to punch at me. Whereas usually I can just be like, dude, I don't want to fight. You don't want to fight. Let's just call it like, people usually they don't care after that. They're like, yeah, this guy doesn't really want to fight.
That's a fair point.
Yeah.
Okay, so my next question would be, because we mentioned the body kick, and recently have a lot of people like ask me questions, say, hey, you should never defend a kick by catching it because you gotta damage and break your ribs. From your own experience, can we kind of talk about this as well?
Yeah, definitely. I would say this comes down to a lot of conditioning and time that you've spent in the gym. Very often that when people catch round kicks, they're taught you should step away from the round kick. So if the round kick's coming this way, I step. And I understand that thought process, but a lot of times in the fight, you don't have the ability to utilize footwork. And I think exclusively pretty much in my fights have just seen a kick come and I just go like that. And I just catch it. And I take it right on the ribs. But I guess there's sort of like a fine point there. It's not on the ribs with my ribs lifted up and stretched because I'm not doing that. I'm crushed in, I'm extending my lat out, kind of like when you see Bruce Lee do his V flex. You kind of do that, so your lat kind of exposes itself more. The muscles are going to protect the rib cage, and then when I catch, I've never caught a round kick and been like, oh, or ever caught a round kick and had my ribs hurt. It's never happened. So yes, I have a lot of conditioning, and I might not recommend this for the average person in a street fight. But if you've trained for over a year and you've taken enough round kicks, I don't think your ribs are going to get cracked.
You actually brought a very good point, because recently I started doing a fitness level challenge. So my trainer told me most of martial artists doesn't understand the muscle is using to protect your body. And you brought out a very good point that when you say sink your rib cage down so your muscle is protecting all that ribs, it just clicked in my head. Because for a lot of time people just catch you with the body upright like this. Right? Versus that you sink it down so now your muscle is more engaged and protects around your ribs.
Yeah, it's such a fine, detailed motion. So if I'm like this and I do nothing, I can feel my ribs right now. My ribs are so exposed. As soon as I even do this motion, it's like everything compacts together and the muscles expose more, and the rib cage is so much more protected. And that's all it takes. It's just a small little motion that the average person would be like, oh no, your ribs are going to get smashed. But very important, just the same way as when you take low kicks, right? Most people, they try and shy away from the low kick, and it's just not protected. Whereas if you flex the leg and you really expose the muscle and you squeeze it, you can take, well, at least I can take low kicks for days once I do that. But if I relax the leg and you kick me once, I'll probably be hobbling out. So yeah, that muscle protects you so much.
So Michael, my episode today will be basically on rounding off around the best kick for the streets and rate them by individual. And if you had to say one thing to teach a beginner how to defend himself properly, what would you teach?
Street fight scenario, and they want to defend themselves properly. And we're assuming that there's no way of talking out of it. Like the guy's he's gonna attack you.
Yeah. Correct.
I would, if I was teaching a beginner's class, I would say 99% of the time, somebody who's attacking you, let's assume they don't know what they're going to do. They're going to come with something like that. It's going to be big. It's going to be wild. It's not going to be crisp and straight down the middle. So learning how to block those shots and following up immediately after to stun them would, in my mind, be the most important. So if I was going to teach somebody, and keep in mind, self-defense is not my area of expertise. I'm obviously a prize fighter, but still I would be teaching people hands up here, block with the forearm, and counter with a palm fist. I think it would be as basic as that. It's either going to be boom or boom. One of those two, deal with the shot, hit them once, hopefully hit hard enough right to the jaw that you stun them, and then just start leaving. Like, don't hang around for more. I think it would be as simple as that, because anybody who's in the fight world hopefully understands, I'm sure you do, that you can do this in the gym, and as soon as you go to hard sparring, you might perform here. As soon as you go into the ring, you're going to perform here. In a street fight, you might perform down here. Who knows what the nerves are going to do? So the more complicated, in my mind, it is, the less likely you're going to actually pull it off. I feel like block strike is as simple as I can possibly think, and that's why I would teach it.
That is awesome. So you answer a lot of questions that I have for you today. There's because I have been thinking about like different ways to like rate the best kick for self-defense. But I think I would bring someone like you who has a lot more experience than me in fighting experience. So it's more like definitely more credential. There's a lot of credibility behind your talk.
Yeah, at least from a kickboxer's point of view, I suppose. I'm sure there'd be some guys in the world who might have issues with what I said because they're real street fighters. But yeah, if you are somebody who's trained, that's the funny thing, right? You can train martial arts for decades and decades and not realize that you're not really prepping up that well for street self-defense. Like, it's not necessarily... Every martial art is not suited to street self-defense. I would say in general, kickboxing and Muay Thai is pretty good. But, if I was just training for street self-defense and that was it, I would do things very differently. I would stop hitting like this all the time. I would not be working combos. It would be very different.
Yeah, and keep in mind that we're actually just talking about kicks. We're not talking about like arms, elbows, and knees or headbutts. Just strictly just kick for today.
Yes, yeah. I mean, there's so much that changes with self-defense, but I really think that a lot of times, at least in my experience, if you can take away the ego, you can take away anger that you might have, you can just be passive, that it's pretty easy to talk your way out of street fights. At least it has been for me.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for answering those questions today.
Of course.
Well, that was a lot of good information with Gabriel. I hope you guys enjoyed the video today. How would you rate these different kicks for self-defense? Let me know in the comment section below. Otherwise, I'll see you guys next week. Stay tuned, guys. Bye-bye.